Very good afternoon, everyone. I learned, looking at the agenda, that you guys have heard a lot about AI. And guess what? We have a panel on AI. So what me and my friends, the panelists, decided that let's tell you something different. So just to give you a quick context, AI has been in the works for the last 50 plus years. More than that, World War II, Turing, you know that. And the latest buzz is around the large language models, the ChatGPT 4. In between, lots of technology development. Neural networks. You know about layers, you know about neurons, you know about weights. Comes the technology, CNN. Really good at matrix multiplication, so this technology is used a lot for visuals. Comes the technology, RNN. This has time factor in it, so a lot of time series-based analysis use this technology, use this architecture called RNN. Comes more technology innovation, comes reinforcement learning, self-learning, beating your own self-learning. Then you hear about GAN, generative adversarial networks, 2 neural networks, one building, one checking and learning. Last few years, there are 2 technologies that really interest me. One is called diffusion technology. What diffusion does, and I'm going to explain to you in a very simple manner, you take a picture, add noise to it, add more noise to it, add more noise to it. That's how you train your system. Then the use case then becomes, you take a very noisy picture and you remove noises. You keep on removing noises because you've trained yourself. That's the diffusion technology. So what has happened over the years? Image recognition, voice recognition, text recognition, and large language model. Now comes the crux that I want to talk. If you look at ChatGPT 4, it has about 1 trillion parameters. Do you know to run this trillion parameter model, you need up to 1 million GPUs, several 100,000, or even 1 million. Each GPU has a smart gaming kind of GPU is 300 watt. Now, one GPU 300 watt, 1 million hours is 300 million hours. Watt hours is the electricity that one ChatGPT 4, 1 trillion parameter model takes. Now, it is 300,000 kilowatt hours. Do you know that is the electricity 300 people will take for an entire year to run one ChatGPT compute leveraging 1 million GPUs. The world today, uses 26 petawatt of electricity power. And data centers use 0.5%. US, 3%, China, 4%. India, 0.05%. So in the next few years, we will get to 0.5%, which means so much energy consumption. So my whole panel is going to talk about what does it take to drive this kind of AI wave, the infrastructure requirements. So I'm going to go there and talk to my panelists and friends, leveraging this theme. Nigel, I wanted to ask you, we have talked about AI with Tesla, with autonomous driving, with ADAS. I wanted to hear from you your thoughts and views on AI for health, for biopharma, for diagnostics. Just what do you see and how can India play a part?
So I think AI we've all been talking about is transforming every industry, right? For me, health is really exciting because in the work that Publicis Sapient does with a lot of our clients, we're seeing it play a huge role in everything from medical imaging and diagnostics there, where now AI enabling radiologists to spot trends that they were just not able to see simply through faster recognition of patterns. Patient outcomes, so nurses actually being able to be augmented with AI, being able to come up with dynamic treatment plans on the basis of what data sets the machines are spewing out. Because even in a ICU, you've got a nurse to 4 patients maybe, right? And however much you're monitoring them, you're not able to stay on top of their trends and you're not able to predict where the patient's heading. You then start to think about drug discovery. I mean, and molecule identification. There's a ton of progress being made there. For me, I think the biggest outcomes also happen at the consumer level, being able to interrogate data sets that are actually authentically based on medical information that you can rely on. So we're seeing a lot of small language models in specific contexts being able to answer questions that are very, very prescient about, not go to the internet and Google headache, right? Because if you Google headache, 3 clicks later, it tells you you're gonna die because you might have a brain tumor, right? Not that kind of, but real specific articulation based on the experience you have. And I think as you start to evolve this, you get to a world where personalized medicine, melding with genetics of every single person starts to become far more accessible, far more cost-effective. So to me, health is a fascinating space. I mean, just the other week, something as basic as getting health information out to companies. We work with a very large pharmaceutical company to look at their medical and legal review process in conjunction with Microsoft as an example. And there, how do you speed that process up, which currently takes thousands of reviews of people, lawyers, marketers, now building a model to start to do the checking to say, hey, does this ad actually live up to the expectation or the law in a country? Does it actually deliver the message that you're trying to communicate? Does it actually, can it be versioned, multiple times to fit multiple countries? I think any one of those things is a game changer for an organization like that, both in terms of accelerating the pace of providing medical care to patients, but also in terms of taking cost and driving efficiency in their businesses.
Nigel, can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Since you talked about personalization, do you see that a platform like ChatGPT 4 becomes the base, and let's say Indian government could provide a platform like that, which is similar to, let's say, UPI, and then personalized AI verticals, let's say health, or let's say hospitality, or let's say traffic, could be built with much smaller parameters, let's say 1 billion, which our country, with the power shortages and all of that could drive. What do you think about that kind of personalization?
I think personalization in that kind of context more broadly is super interesting, right? Because India's got tremendous access to diverse data sets, and you can start to build very specific solutions for India, by India, because India's also got an extraordinarily tech literate workforce. So, you could start to think about, things like city governments or state governments marrying traffic data and traffic patterns with the fastest routes to the hospital for people, depending on where and what they're, so you can start to imagine so many of these possibilities where the personalization happens at multiple tiers. It happens at the tier of the country, it happens at the tier of the state or the city, it happens at the tier of the hospital, and then ultimately at the tier of the patient. And every one of those, the more interactions you have, the more you'll start to create data sets that you can use to train models to create even more specific solutions, like an example of traffic data and health data, prioritizing access on streets to allow somebody to get from where they are to a hospital.
Yeah, I love it. That very golden hour that people talk about, if we could do a traffic manipulation so people could go to the hospital with the golden hour.
Sure.
That's an excellent idea. Ahmed, I wanted to ask you, AI and education. When I look at India, we have a lot of children who don't have access to good schools or good teachers. How do you think, AI and company like yours could help us and could help build a system which drives education?
Yeah, thank you for those fascinating examples on healthcare. And I think the three pivots that, from a social impact perspective, healthcare, agriculture, and education, and this point on education is a good one. Yesterday, we met with the founder of a digital coaching company called PhysicsWala. Thomas, physics, Wala essentially means, I don't know what it means, who delivers physics, perhaps, right? And it's not physics, it's a company that does STEM education. But aside from the fact that they are looking at helping students, and they have 40 million, I'm trying to get the number right here. They have 40 million students on their platform. And one of the programs they run is for 4,000 rupees a year. Now that can only be enabled by using data sets, AI technology at scale.
Yes.
Because 4,000 rupees a year creates an ability to empower kids from the most rural communities in India and provide them a platform or an equal platform where they can go to an IIT or they can go to an NIT, which was a very rare case when I was growing up in this part of the world. So I'm excited about what we can do and how we can be more inclusive, and I use the word inclusive with a lot of intentionality.
Thank you very much. Later on, I'm going to come back to you on a question on renewable energy and orchestration and what Microsoft could do. But I wanted to ask Thomas. First of all, Thomas, our interaction in the waiting room was very exciting. I really love the culture.
Thank you.
Thomas's mom's birthday is tomorrow, and he's flying to Germany to celebrate with her. That was so sweet of you. GitHub tells me that we can count on you for democratization of AI. We have, if I think of India, there are three things that India is synonymous to. One is people, which is equal to data. The other is software. The perception around the world is India, everybody's a software. And scale, that Ahmed just talked about. We've seen whether it is COVID vaccine or whether it's implementation of the JAM Trinity and UPI interface, India has demonstrated scale. So to enable scale, how can we leverage GitHub for democratization of AI such that people can grab such AI codes and build on top? How can you help?
That's a great question, and I think it ties directly into the question on education. One of the most fascinating use cases of Copilot is when kids use it to learn about the world or learn about coding. And one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is it doesn't only speak English, it also speaks Hindi and Kannada and Bahasa in Indonesia, or Brazilian Portuguese and Spanish and many other major languages. And so a 6-year-old that is fascinated by Minecraft or by Super Mario and wants to build their own little game, they don't have to learn English first to figure out how that all works. They can just start asking Copilot questions of how I do that. And in the past, you always had to have parents with a technical background, or you had to know somebody to ask all the questions that you have, because who else is going to help you through those problems? And the Copilot does that for you, does it for the parents. It has infinite patience. If you're a parent, raise your hand if you do have infinite patience. I don't. And it can answer any questions without any bias. And so kids can really explore coding, can dive into the matter and solve their own problems, which is, the biggest dopamine hit that we have is when you solve a problem that you were stuck in and then you can see the game working. Now, this doesn't only work for kids, it also works for anyone who wants to learn coding, anyone who wants to use software to solve a problem. And I think that is where the democratization really comes from, similar to how anyone can start drawing, anyone can start learning the piano. Now with Copilot and AI, anyone can learn to code.
One quick question. People are talking about the goodness of AI and the challenges with AI. With GitHub and all of the code available, do you foresee some kind of a rating given to a code which basically accesses or leverages people's data and drives it into information and can create value for the user. Is there any way you think that there'll be something like a rating system for this piece of code?
I think, you know, the way this always works in open source is that many people around the world collaborate together in what we call the largest team sport on earth. You know, for the last 20 years, the open source community has created an amazing innovation out in the open across many countries, including here in India. And often, as an open source maintainer, you don't even know who you're working with. You know their username, you know their code, but you don't care about their title and their part in the hierarchy of an organization or their education or reputation. You care about collaborating with code together. So I think the open source model is actually better than any other collaboration that we have on earth, you know, that has no borders or boundaries. And B, it will help us to create a better world because developers, you know, around the world will keep innovating in open source with the help of AI, with the help of AI data, and with the help of open weights and open source large language models.
Thank you. Nigel, we want to be honest to our time and we want to just ensure that, you know, people catch up. So I wanted to give you the last few seconds that we have to make any closing remark.
Well, I think just listening to Ahmed and Thomas and what you were talking about before, I guess for me, the biggest skill I think we have to develop in this new world is a skill to kind of learn, unlearn, and then relearn. We've got to be constantly learning. The power has to come from our ability to learn as opposed to what we know. Because so much of what we know isn't going to be as relevant going forward. So when you think about a kid, you know, it's not about AI giving them the answer. It's about AI helping them understand how to solve that problem. So Emma's example is a personal tutor. Is what I take away from that example. You know, every one of us now has access to a personal tutor at a very low cost, every child. And similarly, you know, to play the piano, I never learned to play the piano on a piano, but, you know, now I can actually digitally. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I think we're going to end up with learn, unlearn, and relearn. I think that's the dial that we have to constantly work on. So thank you very much, and thanks my panelists. You were amazing.
Thank you so much.